Hello there, friends, and welcome back to Axie Tuesday. Today, we're going to get to talk to a member from the Latam community currently in Mexico. It's Kmanu. You know him, you've heard him, you love him, and we're going to talk to him today. He was actually on my stream a long time ago last year when I was still getting my feet wet in the Axie community, and really excited to catch up again. I've gotten to meet him at several Axie meetups as well. So without any further ado, welcome to the show. Mr. Kmanu, how are you, my friend?
Thanks so much, Zyori, for the invitation. I'm, to be honest, pretty glad to be invited. I'm happy to be here and to share kind of the Latin America perspective of Axie Infinity and all its ecosystem to your audience.
Absolutely. It's a really exciting time, and there are so many Spanish speakers playing Axie Infinity right now, both Axie Classic and excitement about Axie Origin. It's one of the more unique communities. South America is so big, and then there's all these people in Brazil that also speak Portuguese. We're working on doing some stuff with our Brazilian friends down there as well. But then, of course, there's Spain over in Europe, and Spain is one of our biggest demographics in Europe by far, and I have to imagine it's because there's just so much content and so much more for them to interact with because of the Latam community. You know, if you total up all of the Spanish speakers in Axie Infinity, it's a hell of a demographic, man. Y'all represent.
Yeah, it's amazingly big. I mean, my main countries are Argentina, then no, Venezuela, Argentina, and Spain. Spain's really big. It's like my third biggest country in Axie Infinity. So yeah, it has had a huge impact there. Maybe because of the huge amount of content, as you said, there are a lot of creators in Spanish. I mean, the game has gone really, really deep into our community.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. And does it feel like that there's a divide between those communities, or does it more feel like that it's just pretty harmonious and it's Spanish speakers supporting Spanish speakers? I know the dialects are a little bit different, but does the community seem pretty together?
You know, that like the accent, the dialect, that's different, but and maybe football and all that stuff is different, but into the crypto space or the digital space, we are kind of one big community. So we all interact within each other. You know, I have relations with Spanish creators, Venezuelan creators, Colombian creators. We are kind of all together.
That's cool. That's really awesome. So, for those that aren't aware, maybe some of the English speakers watching the stream right now, I'd love to get a little bit of background on you. Give us some of your history. You know, what are you known for? How did you become such an influential person in the Latam community?
Well, I started YouTube like 7 years ago. I used to do software engineering, so nothing to do with what I'm doing right now. I started playing Clash Royale, you know, that mobile game,
Hmm.
and I was pretty good at it. So after like 2, 3, 4 months, I started uploading my videos, and it was like all strategic videos. All of my content has always been around analysis and strategic like gameplay.
Hmm.
So after more or less 10 months, maybe a year, I quit my job and I went full-time job creator. So that was pretty cool and a pretty big step. You know, it's pretty frightening when you do that. Like the
Hmm.
first time you are scared about leaving your job, leaving everything you have studied to go
Yeah.
into full-time content creation. So that was like my first step. And then I became like a professional broadcaster. I was like the broadcaster for Supercell. I traveled all around the world being a broadcaster. And while doing this, I started to invest in crypto. Bitcoin at first, then Ethereum, and then I went into other cryptos. And that's how I ended up watching that documentary about Philippines, you know, Play to Earn. And that's how I learned
Ah.
about Axie. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So were you actually hired by Supercell, or were you like a freelance kind of third-party content creator that was just doing a lot of traveling on their circuit?
I started being like freelance, and then I was hired by, well, not Supercell itself. Maybe yes, the last season before I quit, it was by Supercell, but before was like the production company that works with Supercell. So
Wow.
yeah, I was official. I mean, I traveled with them, yeah, a lot, and I
That's
love that company.
That's really cool though. So you are really ahead of the curve when it comes to like competitive mobile gaming, which is so interesting for me as an esports guy because I have to admit I've come a long way. You know, I've talked about this before. I told the story that the first time I met Psych Out in 2018 and he mentioned like the potential of esports for Axie, I was almost insulted because back then I was, you know, a Dota 2, like a mouse and keyboard esports purist. and I actually found it insulting to think about mobile esports being compared to esports at that level. It's like making me embarrassed to say that right now, because obviously mobile esports is like a huge part of the industry and a growing vertical, and it's inevitably the future, right? Like we're starting to see this ceiling appear where like Valorant came out, right? It's not about new shiny graphics. It's actually about higher frame rate, more consistency, and just meeting that baseline of graphics. It's not about pushing the limits or making sure you have the craziest, most intense graphics card in the world. So as that like becomes the playing field, it becomes more and more reasonable that this little device right here is going to start to catch up a little bit. And how long before you can play a game like Counter-Strike on your phone, where you just plug that into a docking station that has a monitor and keyboard and mouse or something like that. That convergence of mobile and PC is coming, man. And esports is esports regardless of the device. I think that's really the key takeaway I'm bumbling to get at. And I see that now, but it took me a lot of years in the industry to really see that. So you were ahead of the curve though, dude. You saw it like way more than way ahead of the curve than I did. So well done. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, you're right, because I was a Dota 2 player, also a League of Legends. I was Counter Strike gamer. So yeah, of course, that thing about like a mobile phone being esport at first, it's kind of not really fit. But then after a while, when you start playing a lot of mobile games, you see, okay, this has potential. So when I tried Clash Royale, it was like, hey, this has a lot of strategy. It also needs skill. This can become an esport. So at that point, this was like I'm going all in into mobile gaming. So I went with Brawl Stars, Clash Royale, and Free Fire, PUBG Mobile, a lot of games. And now it's like a really an amazingly big industry. I'm sort of in Spanish, one of the OGs into mobile gaming.
yeah, I mean, it seems like it. It's really not that old yet. I mean, how long has mobile esports been a thing? Like 5 years at most. So
At most, yeah.
yeah, you're a
Yeah.
veteran, but with your 5 years skin in the game, it's kind of absurd if you think about it. The time has gotten away from me. I guess COVID lockdown has maybe warped time perspective a little bit also. But I agree
Like
with you.
like the first really really big, amazingly big tournament I was a part of was in 2017. It was in London. The Clash Royale World Finals at that point was called CCGS, and that was like, wow, look what mobile games have done. It was like a huge stadium full of people with one. It was like a normal Dota 2 international worlds, like the final competition. Well, but in Clash Royale, it was like another level. So that
Mhm.
was 2017.
It's come a long way. And I think there's a lot of games that have proven that you can take a really strong esports wrapper, an ecosystem, and competitive structure. And there's a lot of games that you can sort of slot into these various formats and structures. Like Hearthstone is a really good example of a game that I say really wasn't the best game, and over like from an esports perspective, and over time Blizzard added more and more random elements and made it kind of a worse esport and a better casual game, but it still had a pretty robust esports scene for a long time because it was just a good circuit. It's a good system, and there's a nostalgia and a love for that kind of game, and people enjoyed watching it. I think everyone was surprised at the beginning the kind of viewership that Hearthstone was able to get as a simple card game once you start putting some competitive layers on top of it. So, ironically, even though I'm not really that bullish on Hearthstone, I think it did really prove the potential that exists with these relatively simple games, right? These games that can be played like kind of mobile first, and still fit into that esports entertainment fandom thing that everybody gets so excited about.
Yeah, well, no one can argue that Hearthstone is right now an esport. I mean, it
Yeah.
has its own scene. Yeah, it's like a really strong esport, and it's one of the examples of games that maybe are not like mainstream, like the top number one game in the world, but they have their community, their scene, their competitive scene, and there's people living around Hearthstone. So yeah, they have done it. It's
Yeah.
one of the good examples. Yeah.
And certainly on a higher level, like Magic the Gathering has had a
Yeah, of
very
course. Yeah.
long history, very robust kind of competitive circuit, and poker as well. Like I see more and more overlap from traditional card players, like Elijah. He comes from a professional poker background.
Oh, I didn't know. Elijah was a poker player?
Yeah, yeah, oh
I
yeah.
didn't
So
know.
I think that more and more we're gonna start seeing like folks that really like those kind of games. They have crossover with Axie, and if you like card games and you like NFTs and you like economy games or like economy type simulators, like World of Warcraft Auction House. I know a lot of people that played World of Warcraft really just for the economy. They just liked buying things and flipping things on
Yeah,
the auction
I
house and
know.
making gold. That was the gameplay to them more so than the raids or the dungeons or anything else. So there is definitely a personality type where Axie is just the perfect combination of economy, card, and collectible all in one really unique package.
Yeah, well, economy is a huge part of the game. In fact, economy is like the game itself with the card game. It's like
Hmm.
the fusion of both worlds is what we find in Axie. So that's what interests me. I'm really fan of economy. It's like my hobby. I'm always reading economy a lot. I have like tons of books of economy. So that's one of the things that really love. Also, that it's a really mobile game. It's a really good game to be in my cell phone, and that's what I have always been doing. So that was also a connection. But yeah, the economy I think it's really important. And as you said, I mean, World of Warcraft, that game has an amazing economy, and there's a lot of players all around that. So yeah, that's a good example.
And also, what's cool about World of Warcraft is that the servers are isolated and the economies operate differently on different servers. And I think that is a really great, like, you could probably write a little like research paper about that. A case study of how these same like tools end up manifesting in very different ways across these different servers through different circumstances. Are you a big collector? Like, do you collect outside of NFTs? I see some plushies and stuff in the background, so you strike me as the sort.
Well, here, as you see, I collect from my travels. From different countries, I go to different events. So from every single event I go, I bring something. Maybe this is Among Us. You see, we have like Clash Royale, Brawl Stars. We
Mm,
come from a lot of games. So everywhere I go, I bring something to put back here.
I
So
like
yeah,
it.
more or less that's what I collect. Then I used to collect like Magic the Gathering. I was a really strong fan of Magic, but that was like a long time ago. Right now, I'm not playing anymore.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So, how about collectible Axies? Are you like a Frosty guy? You got any Japanese? Do you have a Mystic? Any origins? Like, I'm very curious here.
Well, I used to have a lot of them. Right now, I don't have it myself. I still have it, but with my academy. All
Gotcha.
of my assets are now with my academy. So T2 Latam owns like every single Axie that I've got, and also all the lands. Also, everything is from T2 right now. So I
Gotcha.
used to collect them myself. Right now, it belongs to T2 Latam,
But
the
so
academy.
what do we got in the collection though? I mean, what's the priority? Are we a Frosty guy? Are we a Japanese guy? Like give me some details here. What really resonates with Kmanu when it comes to Axie collecting?
Well, I'm not really into the Japanese parts, but my final goal was to buy that really weird 100% Christmas Axie. I mean, it's pretty expensive. That's like a goal for the future, but that's what I'm aiming. That's what I want. I don't want a Mystic. I want that Axie,
Okay.
which I know is pretty expensive. I know.
But still, no, the Christmas ones are cool and actually surprisingly rare. And a lot of people don't realize this, but there's two different sets of Christmas ones. There's the
Yep.
2018 and the 2019. And most people know about the 2019 ones because that's when the Frosties were out. So you can have Christmas parts on a Frosty, you could have a Frosty with no Christmas parts, or a Frosty that has some
Yeah.
Christmas parts. But for the 2018 ones, that was before Frosties, and that was before Axie was popular at all. If I'm not mistaken, that might have been one of the first Axie breeding events. It was certainly before my time, but those are really rare. Like the spruce tree, the one that's like a green horn, like a big Christmas tree on the front. There's only like 30 of those or something. It's super rare, and they're really expensive. I think somebody listed one for 5 ETH a while ago. I actually kind of want to pull it up real quick and see if I can find what it's worth because it's one of the like rarest Axie parts that most people I think aren't even aware of. But yeah, Christmas parts are really cool. That's a good shout. I think to some people they're more interesting than Mystics, no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, that's what I want. I want a really whole 100% Christmas Axie. I know there were 2 events. I thought we were having like the third one this last Christmas. We didn't. Hope we have one this year.
Yeah, I think this last year was really hard for us to do
Mm.
breeding events because, like, there's no doubt that breeding events inflate the number of axies, and
Yep.
we've just had this period of time where there has been a lot of natural inflation of axies because there was a huge demand surge, and then there was a big supply surge, and then we turned off the rewards for adventure, so now things have slowed down a little bit, predictably so. That's totally okay. We're not worried at all, but we do have some extra axies lying around right now. So it hasn't been the best time for a breeding event. We really need like another burning event. We did the Lunasian Express, but I think
Yeah,
we need to do a burning event before we do a breeding event to like kind of
but
cross
that's what
them
I
out,
was
you know?
gonna tell you. That's like a really good idea. Why instead of making a breeding event to get like Christmas parts, you do a burning event? If you burn some axes, you can get like a Christmas axie. That would be amazing. Everybody wants a Christmas axie, so that's a pretty weird axie to get. And at the same time, you are burning axes, which is kind of one of the economic issues that we have right now. It's not even SLP; it's the huge amount of axes. So
That
that might be a really good idea.
You know, that is so simple and so beautiful. I feel like that idea has kind of been tossed around or like talked around, but just framing it that way is so elegant. It's an anti-breeding event where instead
Yeah,
of making
anti-breeding.
more
Yeah.
axies, you take two axies, you fuse them together, and if they have whatever combination, special combination, just like in a normal breeding event, there's a chance to get the special part. So it's the same outcome of you're getting these unique, rare, collectible axies, but it's reducing the number that are in circulation rather than creating more. That is very simple and very genius. I'm going to run it up the ladder. It's for the devs watching right now. Take note, folks. We're having an internal conversation later. I don't have a great answer as to why, but I think that concept sounds reasonable. That's a pretty simple burning mechanism that if the cosmetics are cool, if it looks awesome enough, people will be excited about it. It would be interesting to do a breeding event like this now that we're at this scale. I think in the past, all the Axie breeding events were really more centered around we need more users, so we need to incentivize people to do this. We have so many more users now. It'll be interesting to see
Yeah.
what happens. How many of these combos get created.
Yeah, I think it might be really good. At the same time, maybe if you already have like a Christmas part, like a Christmas B3, we can say, and you then burn that one, you have higher chance to get that part and a new one. Maybe that way you will still get to burn to try to find like the final full Christmas axe. I mean, I'm like
Yeah,
thinking a lot. Yeah, but
spitballing
it would be
totally.
pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the real question is like, is it a new breeding, like, or is it a new cosmetic part, or is it just the old ones? Are we reusing these old ones, or do we just insert a whole new a whole new concept? Like Viking axies or pirate axies, or
Yeah.
you come up with the lore. Maybe it's space parts to match the space suits.
I,
Whatever the
I
the
will
lore
do a
masters
new.
come up
I
with.
will with a new one because if not, like the original Christmas Axie owners will get mad.
That's true. Yeah, you always have to worry
Yeah.
about inflating the past supply. That's a really good
Yeah.
point. But no, it's a good suggestion, and I think obviously we're getting closer and closer to being able to do these kind of events. I know it is really slow and not exciting for the audience, but this last year has been so much about like the foundation and securing the blockchain and making sure that all the pieces are there for us to scale this thing, and then we can start adding these really fun layers on top. We still need to get the bridge open, and we're getting much closer, and it's such a high priority, and it's actually kind of paining us that we can't open the bridge faster. But it's just going through many layers of auditing and special care that everything is going to be absolutely fine and perfect for when it's reopened. We have to be extra careful right now and make sure everything is done right and that there's no errors. And unfortunately, that does come at the expense of time sometimes. So while you're right, and I totally agree, we're still dealing with some of these foundational things that are kind of like base layer, compared to breeding events or even esports or some of these other things that we're talking about. So we're getting there, man. We're getting there, but it's slow and steady.
And Sayori, will this really really um, really how's the word? I mean, it skipped out of my mind. These axes that are not like special axes will have like a special role in the land gameplay, or will be like normal axes,
Probably normal
like having a
axes.
Christmas
I
one or
mean,
maybe a mystic one.
yeah, it's a good question, right? I think land is still being developed in such a way that it's really hard to say what's going to be finalized. I love the idea of different Axie like parts or types having different benefits or buffs like in land gameplay. Just like if you think about the Axie universe, right? Like let's picture a few years into the future when the Builders program has multiple games that are complete and operating in this Axie ecosystem. You might have an Axie racing game where the different headpiece correlates to like a different item like Mario Kart style. So maybe people really want like the mushroom because the mushroom is a boost, just like in Mario Kart. So all of a sudden these Axies that have mushrooms are like really valuable for this racing game that's been popping off because, you know, they decided to do a, you know, $100,000 tournament for this racing game. You know, things like that can start happening to start driving demand and specialty for Axies outside of just the Axie Origin card game, but other parts of the Axie universe. So I think within that vision, right, that big
Yeah.
framework, it's reasonable to think that eventually land will have different elements where, hey, we have to battle these chimera or like harvest this resource, and maybe Axies of X type or X body part, you know, like maybe spiky Axies are slightly better in battle on land because they have body armor on. I don't know. Maybe that puts too much power on spiky Axies and they're too rare. I'm not sure. I'm just spitballing. But I think at a high level, that sounds really cool, right? Like that sounds like a really great way to make sure certain Axies have like a unique place in the universe and a specific utility. Sounds hard to balance, but I think over time, that's definitely something that we could aspire towards.
I think in that case you will have to balance for each game, because if
Yes.
not, it's gonna be pretty hard. If not, if you have to balance like the whole Axie ecosystem for like 5 different games or 10 different games, it's gonna be pretty hard. Maybe it's for
Yeah.
each game, each balance. But that's what something I want to ask you too, because so is the Axie land gameplay or the Axie metaverse gonna focus on games, or will it also have like live stream events, for example, like a concert of an artist or something like that?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. I see what you're getting at. Like there's almost two different types of interpretations for land gameplay. One of them is more about the actual gameplay of land. Like what are we harvesting? What are we building? Why are we building it? What is that game loop? And then the other side is sort of the like Second Life, VR chat, Decentraland. Like, I just want to hang out with my friends, or like, I want to go to the Axie Town Square and, you know, suggest a proposal or do a town hall or like an in game concert or something like that. Very different styles of what land could be. And I think Sandbox is maybe an example of something that's in the middle, right? Where it's sort of a hangout, but then it's also kind of an MMO RPG by itself, right? Um, I wish I had a better answer for you. I see a lot of value in the hangout, and that's something that I've been trying to rally support for and encourage other people in the community to speak up if they value that. I would love, like, while we're building land gameplay, to be able to just load into my land plot, pick an Axie as an avatar, invite any of my friends that have Axies, like what you know, add their Ronin wallet, and then just let them load into my land and jump around as Axies and just talk and hang out and play around with my land items and build them and look at stuff. I would use that. I think that streamers could use that to do like little podcasts or little role play sessions and all sorts of just fun. Hey, look at my Axie in this universe, just playing around with these items. You know, maybe you could have little emotes where your Axie goes to sleep or your Axie dances, just like in World of Warcraft. Really simple, just visual hangout experiences. I want this very badly. I want like Axie Crossing, you know, like Animal Crossing, but Axie Crossing.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
I think that sounds amazing. I don't think that that's like the number one vision for land right now. Like, I think the priority is making it an actual gameplay experience, which I also think is really important. But I would love to see a future where we have both, because when I bought my land a year ago, I definitely envisioned something like like what we're describing, where this is where Axie governance is going to take place. This is where we're going to meet to do these, like, you know, hey, this is the quarterly town hall. Let's hear from the mayor of Lunacia and, you know, gather and load in, you know, the Lunacian emergency broadcast system, you know, this kind of thing. So it's all open-ended, right? Like Axie is in alpha, the universe is in alpha, the universe is maybe like a quarter deployed or something. So these are all like really big, important questions that we're in the process of answering. And as we answer them, you know, in eye of the public, we're gathering that feedback, and the vision is changing and updating, right? When we did that land stream a month and a half ago, Phil and I, and the reaction was really negative, and we said, okay, well, we're going to do land staking until we figure it out. Ever since then, Phil has just been listening, engaging with, and trying to understand the perspective of community members to try to make the land experience as close to those expectations as possible with you know, within the parameters that he's given. So I think everything that we're talking about, this is just one more data point, right? Like if we can make a good case for it, if you can communicate that, hey, this is an experience that all these people would love, and this is why we would use it, and this is why it would be a big win. At the end of the day, we just want to make the best possible product possible. So very long-winded answer there to say, like, who knows, man, maybe. You know, like, it's something that we could build. And I do share the vision, though. I think it would be really cool. I want to hang out with my friends.
Yeah, everybody's excited about like the SDK, for example, seeing like things built by the community or by companies, maybe Adidas or Nike or some big company coming into Axie and building with the SDK and having their own experience in here. So that's kind of something like community is like pretty excited about. So it would be amazing to have all those words like land gameplay, also the possibility to walk in this world and interact with friends and all that stuff. It would be great.
Yeah.
The sandbox, as you mentioned, is pretty close to that idea. They have their own land gameplay with like a play to earn they are trying right now. It's like in alpha test, but at the same time you can build. So going into that path, it would be like amazing for Axie. And also, I mean, we're talking about lands. I'm gonna abuse and go one step further and ask you, if I do not own a land, what's going to be my role there? Because a lot of people is asking me that, and I
Yeah.
don't know what to answer.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And it's another one that is still kind of being figured out in real time. There will be some type of interaction. Like we obviously know just by simple numbers, right? There's millions of Lunacians and there's only thousands of land plots. So how do we reconcile this, right? Like how do we make sure that everyone can have a meaningful land experience? I think the answer will be some sort of a load in where even if you don't have a plot, there will be some area where you can load in as your Axie, and maybe you can stay on public roads and engage. Maybe you can walk on another person's land if you have permission, or if you do, you are farming resources for them or something. Something where you can interact, but you don't own stuff. Sort of like a renter instead of an owner. Something like that. We have to figure out the scale, right? That's the hardest part. Having millions of people all load into the same instance, it's just too many Axies and the server's going to crash. So like, how do we make this meaningful experience where land feels real, but knowing there's going to have to be some sort of like instancing or like different servers or some way to, make it scalable for millions of people to have kind of an experience. So I don't have all of the technical answers for that, but I think it is important that non-land owners have some way to interact with land, because even, let's think about it from the lens of a landowner. If I have a shop on my land, I want to be able to sell stuff to customers. And if I can only sell stuff to other landowners, that we're all trying to sell stuff. We're not buyers, we're sellers. Yeah. So we need to bring buyers into Lunacia to and maybe it's not even goods, but even if I'm advertising something, or if I have a mini game, whatever it is, maybe you're just trying to buy people's attention, right? That's what the buyers are. You're just trying to get their eyeballs. We still need people to interact with it. The sandbox isn't very fun if you can't bring your friends into the sandbox. So yeah. There's got to be something there. There's got to be some way that we can mix people in and make that a more robust experience. So the exact best way to do that, we're still figuring out. maybe it's an area where it's just like one spot on the edge of the savannah where non-landholders can hang out and then they could run around on roads. I think we have to be really careful to make sure we're not taking away from the experience of landholders or making it feel like it's like starter Axies. When we first announced starter Axies, people were really afraid, well, now people can just play for free. What's the point of buying Axies? It's like, well, because the starter Axies are pretty limited. Like it's a starting point, but you're not going to have as much fun playing the game if you're only using starter Axies relative to NFTs. But they're still good enough that you can have a good starting experience. I think land needs to be similar. There has to be some little entryway just so people can see it and experience it, and then that will drive more demand for people to want to buy it, and that will help the landholders because it's like more natural advertising by letting more people see it, if that makes sense.
And I was thinking while you were like telling me all of this, it has a huge potential in one point because we are now building a universe or a metaverse, of course, for Axie. And you have like the IP, which is Axie Infinity. You also have running, which is a whole network. So you can now build like a second, a third, or a fourth IP. Are you planning as KManuS to have more IPs and maybe to make them interact? For example, having like a second IP and these NFTs being able to also join like the Axie metaverse?
Yeah, it's a great question. No, I mean, I love where your head is at because we do think long about the universe. And I think when you frame it like a universe, it opens up the potential for that to happen. Is that a plan right now? Not specifically, right? We have a lot of stuff we need to polish and finish with Axie before we can really make detailed plans about the future. But as we start exploring, like, okay, how do we get more games onto Ronin? What games do we want on Ronin? Is the approach more, hey, we want to buy this specific game? Or is the approach more, hey, we want to buy this specific game studio because we know they'll be able to make a number of good games that could be in the Axie universe? And depending on which studios or which games we're talking about, some of them might be games that are either in alpha or under construction that could be reskinned where it's the same gameplay, but you just put Axies in it instead of the characters they had, since we have a great IP. Or maybe it's an existing IP that's like, hey, we're going to buy this, and now we're going to do the merge of these two worlds where somehow these creatures enter Lunasia or they interact with Axies. I think all of that is on the table and there's a ton of potential there. It depends on what the IP is, who the partner is, what they're open to, and what makes sense. Like, I don't think we want to force anything. I don't think we want to ruin the IP by, doing a partnership with DC Comics and being like, all right, Batman's here. Batman's in Lunasia now. Woo, check it out. He's got an Axie. Like, as cool as that sounds and as memeable as that is, it's pretty cheesy, right? Like we saw that in what was that mobile game? Was it Arena of Valor? I think where they did the crossover with DC characters. So it's like Mobile Legends style. You have these like Dota characters, and all of a sudden Wonder Woman shows up, and you're like, I don't understand why you're here. I know this is what the metaverse is all about, but this is freaking me out right now. So you have to do it tactfully. I think it has to make sense. It would have to be like things that could make sense to be in Lunasia or something that we could write into the lore. But I totally, dude. There's such a high ceiling on that kind of stuff when you're talking about writing an awesome universe. And like I'm working on a comic book right now for my Zyori avatar, and it's going to be like my avatar enters the metaverse kind of thing, and it's going to be mostly focused on Lunasia, but it is going to have crossover and interoperability. And I'm sort of using it as a bit of a testing ground to see what the potential is to start writing a universe lore that starts tying together all these different projects and see if any of that can translate to Axie. Because I agree with you. I think that's like a really cool long-term thing to start exploring. There is a lot of sick IP out there that Axies could be a great fit for.
Well, for example, Clash Royale, Clash of Clans. I mean, those characters would be amazing in the Axie metaverse. That kind of animation is pretty.
It's true.
I see chemistry there. Yeah.
I love the idea of the Axies needing to call in help to stop the Chimera invasion. Like the Axies are too peaceful, so it's like we need reinforcements, we need warriors. And I always think of the second Lord of the Rings movie at the end when Gandalf shows up with all the people. It's just like we're here to save the day. I see that in my head all the time in terms of these kind of like battle crossovers.
Yeah, but you're right. Having Batman there is kind of weird. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, to be fair, there's probably subtle ways that you could do it, and that could be great meme marketing material. You know, we could do a funny crossover where Batman has an Axie, but I think making Batman like a core character in the Lunasian universe, that's where it starts to get a little weird. You know, doing memes
Yeah.
in the real world is fine. Making it like, hey, these IPs are just one and the same now. No, that's really weird. That gets like really strange. Like, turns out Lunacio is just a planet in DC. Like, I'm not sure if I would sign off on that. You know, that seems a little off-brand, but who knows? Who
And
knows?
and you have spoken a lot about the lore. What about making like a movie or a TV series
Oh,
or something
dude.
like that around Axie?
That would be so cool. No, I would love to do that. I think, you know, expensive, time consuming, and not something that we could do lightly. Like, I think we need to write the Axie lore before we could do that. You know, like, what's the movie about? That's like a
Yeah,
key
yeah.
question. But yeah, I mean, I think the IP is perfect for it. You know, it's really cute. It's really beautiful. There's a lot of ways that we could like break the fourth wall. It could be live action. It could be purely animated. You know, these sorts of things are really big questions that we need to answer before I think we could commit to something like that. But I love the idea of Axie being more multimedia. Like, we need Axie merch. We need Axie plushies. You know, Axies are the perfect plushie. You know, they're the right shape, they're the right size, they're squishy.
Are we having like an official store to buy like Axie
We're
plushies or
we're
something
working
like
on
that?
it. We're making big progress. We actually just hired a really key person who's going to be in charge of brand and design, who's really helping us there. I'm starting to source some of these things. Actually, Axie plushies are being worked on as we speak, so that's something that's not done yet. But you know, it takes a while to make sure the design is right, and it was hard because we were sort of waiting for Origin stuff to be finalized and released before we committed big into merch stuff, because we knew the art was just about to change, right? So that's also been an ongoing struggle for Axie.
You know what would be really cool? To
Mm.
be able to buy your own Axie. So, for example, you
Yes,
put the parts or you put the ID
dude.
and you then are buying your own Axie. That would be
Dude,
amazing.
that was exactly what I said to our merch team like six months ago or 4 months ago. Where I was like, listen, like, I know this is going to be really hard and we can't do it now, but this is what we want to work towards. All right, maybe we start with a simple set, or you know, it's puff or whatever the plushies are. Okay, that's great. But imagine a like Build-A-Bear style workshop. You know, imagine you come to AxieCon and there's just a wall of all these Axie parts, and you're there constructing your own Axie and sewing your own parts, and it's just like, dude, I made my Mystic. Here it is. I like that. Sounds like an insane logistical operation to be able to do that, but that is cool. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that like you come to AxieCon and have that memorable experience where you're like, I built my own Axie and it was my freaking Axie, and there's like professional people there helping you build it. That's cool. You know, that's the kind of stuff that I aspire towards. We're still a few a few steps away from that, to be perfectly
That idea
clear.
is amazing. Yeah,
But
that idea is
yeah,
amazing. Wait, but are we having an AxieCon?
I think there's no secret that that's something we've been talking about for a while. Like, I think the vision of AxieCon makes perfect sense. We've been doing these meetups all over the world, and every single one has been a success so far. Like, I don't think we've had a meetup that we've organized that was like a disaster or bad. I did that little small one in Portugal. 40 people showed up. It was still amazing. It was a really great, intimate experience, right? So all of this is proof of concept, I think, pushing us towards doing larger and larger gatherings. And now that the world is starting to open up again, you know, I'm just traveling like normal. You know, COVID is now on the decline, thankfully. I think it's almost time, dude. I think AxieCon could be a reality. So it's not far-fetched to start thinking about what would be the coolest experience possible if we were to do a gathering with thousands of people instead of hundreds of people, you know?
Wow, that would be amazing. Yeah, that's another level. I have been part of several Axie meetups. Of course, not all of them, but I have been in LA, in Miami, Argentina, and it's always amazing. And it's full of people. Everybody's going to be there. A lot of like everybody's happy. So having like a bigger picture of this, like a bigger scale, it would be like just another level. So yeah, I hope you can move forward with it. Move forward with this idea. I'm sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. I think some construction started in my building. That's fantastic. Hopefully, it's not too loud. But yeah, I'm. It makes me excited to think about something on that scale. I've attended a lot of gaming conferences in my day, large ones like PAX East and E3 and this kind of stuff. But I've also attended smaller single game ones. Like I was just at Eve Fan Fest in Iceland. I went to the Path of Exile one, AxieCon in 2019, right before COVID started. And those single game conventions, like they hit different because everybody's there for that same purpose. These big like NFT NYC events, they are really fun and it's so cool to meet other people, but it's very scattered. People are there for different reasons. They're there for Axie, they're there for their other favorite collections, all these kind of things. The single game focus, that really shared, like when TI comes to Seattle every year for Dota 2, it's like a Dota 2 takeover. It's like we just show up, and for that week, we own the city. And every bar you go into, you hear people talking about Dota characters, and you see Dota merch, and it's really kind of surreal. It's almost overwhelming in a way. And to think about that with Axie, doing like a full takeover, man, that's really exciting.
Yeah, well, because we would be like all one community, so we are on in the same picture. I lived something like that with Brawl Stars in Korea. I went to Busan. It was like uh, a Brawl Stars event, huge. The buildings had like Brawl Stars characters over them. The beach was full of Brawl Stars. It was like really crazy. All the city was built around Brawl Stars. It was crazy. So yeah, I really loved it because like all of the Brawl Stars community, especially the Asian one, because we are pretty close, it was there. So yeah, I had that experience in Korea and it was pretty good. I would love to have something like that in Axie. So well, maybe if you're mentioning this, we're gonna have it. Maybe.
Yeah, it's an exciting time to think about these things. I mean, it's hard because it wasn't even really possible for most of my time at Sky Mavis. Thinking about how could we do an event, where do we choose that people could attend, and all things equal, choices were pretty limited. So I think it's exciting to dream about the possibilities, man. What else would you like to see at an AxieCon? Like what would be like your dream panel, or who would be your dream like keynote speaker or something that would make you go, wow, I can't believe that person's talking about Axie.
Oh, like not from the Axie community?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of people within the Axie community that obviously
Yeah.
I know that we would include, but I think when you talk about AxieCon, there is potential to start reaching out and see who else could
Would
we
love
get?
to
Who else is out there?
I would love to know or to see like people from the traditional sports, for example, football or maybe tennis. I know a lot of football players. I mean, I was followed by a lot of like Manchester United players. So I know there's a lot of players that are pretty involved in the game. They maybe didn't make it public yet, but they have followed me and texted me around Axie. So I know they are involved. All that kind of names, it would be amazing to have like traditional football players talking about Axie, speaking their experience around it, why they like it. I mean, also, of course, you, Diego, Saika, the traditional one, of course, I would love to see you in like AxieCon. But having those kind of names, it would be great because it's like sort of an outsider that it's part of the community and anybody knows. No one knows, I'm sorry. No one
Yeah,
knows.
no, totally. And I think those are the sort of people that we're searching for. And I've actually heard similar, certainly with sports players, but various other stakeholders at startups and gaming companies that either own Axies or play or kind of bullish on it, but for whatever reason are still a little bit quiet about their investment, and they understand that they are a bit of an influencer, so they just need to be a little bit careful about what they share publicly. And I wonder if AxieCon could be an opportunity for some of these people to come forward, speak about their experiences, join us on panels. So, if and when we announce something, it's definitely something to think about, man. I'm excited to see what that stream of inbound could look like.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, having something like that, it would be amazing. And I want to use this opportunity also because if I'm talking with you like this and I don't ask you about like SOP and Next Economy, my audience would kill me. So will land gameplay improve Axie economy? What's the plan there? Is wrong like the token gonna be involved into the economy like a reward or not? I mean, I have to use this opportunity to ask you this because if not, my community is gonna say, "Hey, bro, you were speaking with Zyori and you didn't ask that." So I have to.
No, I love it. I totally respect it. I'm more just distracted by the construction that started like halfway through this interview. It's actually really irritating me, but I'm trying to smile through it. Um, it's a really good question, and I always have to preface this by saying that I'm not the tokens expert. I'm not the tokens guy. You know, I'm the program lead for esports and content creators. I'm kind of the CEO of the esports startup that exists within Sky Mavis, and I'm championing all that stuff. I do a lot of business development with outside esports and gaming organizations just to evangelize NFT gaming, put us on the radar, and put the industry on the radar. Just try to help navigate them through the sea of information that is trying to understand blockchain gaming. So that's really where a lot of my focus is. The hardest part about balancing the economy right now is related to the incompletion of the tools. Up until this point, it's been really hard to do these meaningful burning mechanisms, or even what we discussed earlier of, hey, let's combine two axes and then that reforges them into one new axis. We kind of don't want people to do that for Axie Classic if we know Axie Classic is about to sort of be secondary and Axie Origin is going to come into the limelight. And we also know it's scary for people to do that if the balancing for Axie Origin still hasn't been figured out. So people are afraid to breed towards Axies that are overpowered because, oh, they might just get nerfed before the season starts, and then I just bred all these Axies that aren't meta anymore. So I think it's very reasonable why people are trying to be patient and wait for that first season to start and really get a good sense of, okay, what is the meta, which axes are going to change and which ones are going to stay the same. So we need to get the game balance of Origin figured out. We need to get Origin off the ground before the burning mechanisms can really be done in a tactful, meaningful way. And I know in the short term that really hurts because token prices are down and there's a bear market hitting right now. But it's really important that we mostly think mid and long term about these kind of features, because burning is like, it's a one-way street, right? Burn means burn. Burn means it's gone. It's destroyed. It's lit on fire. And what's a real shame is to take axes that are subpar right now, but might have great utility in the future, and just completely destroy them because of the snapshot of right now. So we just have to be really tactful. We don't want to put people in a situation where they regret burning their axes. It's a similar kind of a thing with burning SLP. I think some other games have proven, like, people still have to use the burning mechanism, right? Like, burning SLP means lighting tokens on fire. Tokens are worth money, so we're asking people to light some of their own money on fire when we're telling them, like, hey, use this burning mechanism. So if you're burning tokens, you need to be getting something in exchange to make it worth it, right? And maybe that's a chance to win something, or, you know, a chance to refactor an Axie or an upgrade to an Axie. Like, it has to be a burn for something, and it could be cosmetic, right? You burn some SLP and then you get a new hat for your Axie, and the more you burn, the better the hat has a chance to look. And if you burn over 10,000, the hat is golden and sparkly. You know, there's a lot of ways that you can make it a meaningful experience, but it has to be a meaningful experience. It can't just be hey guys, here's a tax that lights a bunch of your SLP on fire before you get to play the game. That's not fun, and that's not scalable, right? The burning mechanism has to be meaningful and have a positive impact on the gameplay outside of just taking tokens out of supply. And I think that is why it's so much more complicated than people realize. It has to check both boxes. It has to take tokens out of supply and also have a meaningful byproduct. It has to do something that has player demand or an impact on the game, or something that people actually want,
It
like
can
an
help a
Axie
lot with
upgrade.
esports too, because I mean, I'm thinking about having a strategy. Maybe I need this actually to have this card. It's pretty hard to find. Maybe I can burn something to change the card to try to get that one card that would help me, eh, like fighting. So for esports, I see it can have potential, especially if you're planning in big for esports, maybe a Cloud9, Team Liquid, or Misfits joining like this team, 100 Thieves, something like that. So if the plans are like really big, having this chance to change cards, maybe like burning SLP, it would really help, because when you go into like the really deep into esports, like the professional esports, they think about everything. They have huge teams thinking strategies, analyzing the game. So they need resources to change and make like really personal strategies. If you go to buy like an Axie that everybody knows that is pretty strong, you're gonna get countered. So they have to think like new possibilities that no one else has thought about it, and they have to be able to build them. And maybe burning SLP would be a mechanism for like the esports scene.
Yeah, I agree. Like overall, we need more of like that deck builder kind of vibe. You know,
Yeah.
more ways to customize your Axies and make that like perfect team tweaked exactly the way you want, rather than having to breed a bunch of Axies for the chance to get that specific one that you want. I like that a lot. Like all things equal, I really like progression more so than random. And I'm okay if it's like less value, you know, like you maybe have lower expected value, but it's guaranteed and you get the one that you want. I think that is much more in line with what you're talking about and kind of that esports strategy. So, yeah, I think with the burning mechanisms, to summarize, it's just really important that we get them right and that the burning mechanisms aren't arbitrary. And I think it's more important that they be right than they come out quickly. And to make sure they're right, we just have to finish deploying Origin in its basic level. So like we're almost there, right? We're halfway through season 0. We've gotten great feedback. We've been pushing out updates very regularly. Origin is making really fast progress. The mobile release just came out, and now we're going through all those bugs and tweaking all the things there. So once that's ready, and then we turn on season 1, then I think these next layers really start to come into focus, and then the burning mechanisms will be able to get brought online in a really meaningful way. So I hate to always say like patience, it's all coming soon, just wait, don't worry. But I hope that at least makes some sense, that like we have to make sure the foundation is good at layer 0 before we can build layer 1. Then we have to make sure layer 1 is safe before we can build layer 2. And like layer 2 is kind of like esports and this like really polished like next level fun stuff that gets us really people like you and me really excited. So we're just starting to chip away at layer 2. I've been saying to people, if Axie's in alpha, our esports is still in like pre-alpha right now, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I know. So first step. So well, I hope to see like Team Liquid or 100 tapes in Axie. That would be like another level.
Yeah,
I mean, for the ones that I know from esports, that are pretty big esports teams.
Yeah, I think there is interest there for what it's worth. You know, it's always hard to tell with these preliminary discussions, but these esports teams work in the esports, or sorry, the entertainment industry, right? And the entertainment industry is all about finding the next big thing. It's not just about being cool; it's about staying cool. So even if Axie isn't for them right now, they're still very curious, and most of them, I think, will be watching to see what kind of esports infrastructure we deploy. You know, that one of the most common questions I get is the game actually esports ready? Like, do you have enough tournaments for us to have a pro player? It's like, almost. We're not quite there yet, but we're getting there. You know, come back in, another quarter or in 6 months or a year, and I think we might actually have enough players that you can start seriously scouting and look at, having a player that makes the run on the professional circuit. So, yeah, I think time will tell on that one, but we're getting closer and closer. So easy to forget how early we are in this stuff. So even though these companies are interested, a lot of them want to make sure they understand the space before they make an investment, and they're just starting that research process now.
Yeah, I can imagine. You know, we lived something like that with Clash Royale. At the beginning, I mean, Team Liquid was in Clash Royale, Misfits. Then Supercell decided to change the competition. It's not more like team oriented. Now it's like 1v1. But at some point, there was the like esports based in like in the traditional way of having like teams, and it was pretty cool to see all those big names in the scene. It was like I would love to see that again in Axie Infinity as I did for Clash Royale. It would be amazing. But well, I know, it's like a process. You have to build first for them to be interested.
Yeah, it's a bit of a back and forth, and I
Yeah.
probably normal for anything entertainment, but especially in gaming, I've noticed that nobody wants to be first and nobody wants to be last, right? Most people don't want to be the guinea pig that takes all the risk by trying something totally unproven. But then once one or two people do it, there's this race to nobody wants to fall behind. So everyone catches up and then you start to see the domino effect. So that's maybe what I'm hopeful for. If we can just break a couple, right? If we can get a few of these early movers, we've already had Team Secret be interested. They've got the Gemini Guild. You know, they're getting their feet wet. They've got a small scholarship, and I think they're patiently waiting for more esports infrastructure to be deployed. So. That's been a big win. I did a podcast with John Yao about crypto and just trying to educate some of their regular gamers on the value proposition of what we're doing. So it is happening, man. It's just happening slowly to a lot of different audiences in little pieces. But I think that's how we'll start winning people over. You know, it's not going to happen all at once. It's going to be this slow process over time.
Besides Axie, how do you see like the whole NFT gaming esports scene? Is it starting to grow or nothing at all?
I mean, it's just so early, right? Like, I think Axie is the only NFT game right now that has a big enough fan base and enough structure that we can even start talking about esports. And when you look at what we're doing right now, it's very preliminary, like building up local esports organizers and then also spending time on these individual activations like the Creator Cup we did last year. Now that's evolved in like the Origin Championship that we just announced. That's only 16 players. It's an 8-player invitational. 8 players qualify on site in the Philippines. That's cool, and it's going to be hype. And last time it had like 40,000 concurrents on the Filipino stream. But you know, it's not quite up there with like League of Legends or Overwatch or Dota 2 in terms of esports volume. So I don't think anyone else is really starting to do these big tournaments. And the key thing with esports, of course, you need that hardcore organic audience to really drive it forward. You know, without the Axie GGs and the Meditates and these existing esports orgs within the game, it's really hard to build storylines and build something substantial. Like we're seeing some of these NFT first-person shooter games do small tournaments, you know, like $10,000 cups here and there. They're okay. You know, there's nothing wrong with them, but the games just don't have this critical player base where there's just not even enough viewers for the tournament to really catch on or be super, super exciting outside of this really niche community. So there's nothing wrong with that, right? There's plenty of niche communities in the Web 2 centralized gaming world also. But when we're talking about esports or like starting to scale things a little bit or hit viewer numbers that feel a little more commensurate with traditional esports, I haven't really seen much else outside of Axie, and I've only seen it like once so far within Axie as well. So I think like all arrows point towards green. You know, it's looking good. We're starting to take these meaningful baby steps, but I'm really careful not to oversell where we're at right now. When I talk to these outside esports orgs, I'm very honest with them. I say, hey, I don't think it's time for you to enter yet. Like, let's go slow. Let's start talking. Like, I'll answer your questions. You know, I'll put you in touch with some of the right people. Watch the things we do throughout the rest of the year. Let's talk once we deploy a little bit more, you know, meaningful esports stuff. You know, bigger prize pools are coming. They're not here yet. So I don't want to like FUD the current state of blockchain esports, but I want to be very realistic that we are in the infancy of infancies here, my friend. You know, this is where esports was 15 years ago.
Yeah, baby steps. Yeah, I know, you're right. And it's important because as you mentioned, esports is entertainment. And if you don't have community and no one is gonna watch, having esports just for the players, it's not, I mean, this is an industry. It has to work. People has to be interested in esports for esports to happen and to be long term. If not, if you are just gonna make one tournament and that's it. So yeah, I understand. You have to build, and it's true that we have in NFT gaming some games that as a game have esport potential, but there's no community. And without community, I mean, a tournament for what? A
Esports is
tournament
an
is for people
amplifier.
to watch.
Yeah, exactly. It's an amplifier. And that's in my esports history. That's one of the things I've gotten offered the most. We want to give you a job and so that you can use esports to get us our player base. And it's like, that's just not how it works. Esports activates your existing player base, gets them more engaged, gets them more excited within your ecosystem. It doesn't really bring in that many new players. It does a little bit, you know, it is like a wide thing and it is an easy touch point for people to share with their friends, but it's really more about keeping your current people engaged than it is about user acquisition, right? That's why it's not called user acquisition. It's a totally separate vertical.
Yeah, completely. I mean, for example, when I worked for Clash Royale, we didn't have any new player there. It was like the really hardcore community, the ones that really know about the game and want to watch like the real top players. So it wasn't even for all of the community. It was for the ones that are really interested in the game in its deepest and most vertical way to really learn, to advance, to move forward into the game. So it's for the actual community that is already there, but it helps making it stronger, making it bigger. So like that's like the real goal, but you won't build like new players out of esports.
Yeah, it seems so obvious to lay it out this way, but I still have this conversation with people that really don't get it. So that it's a big reason why I'm so bullish on Axie esports, because we have so many players that can very easily become fans. And if we can do some like regional qualifiers and start getting that, like, hey, this player he's the only guy from the Philippines that qualified for AxieCon, some of these storylines, all of a sudden these casual fans have a reason to tune into esports, and then the wheels start turning, right? And it's not just about the players, but it is also about reactivating the fans, giving them things to rally behind, and building those storylines. It's exciting, and you're right. That is where new bonds get forged in the community for sure. And it's really cool that we can also bundle esports with the meetup concept, right? Like AxieCon could be an esports tournament and an Axie meetup and convention with all these other panels and speakers and side events, right? It can be both, and that's really cool, right?
That would be really cool, yeah, to have like a part of esports into AxieCon, having maybe a final there, and also like speakers and let's start having all together, like having a convention with everything inside. Yeah, that would be really good. And well, I mentioned you something once ago, some time ago, like 3, 4, maybe 5 months ago, about having like a nation-based competition. I think that can build a lot of hype, not only for the community, but also for people that maybe it's not in Axie right now, but they know about Axie. It's like, wow, I'm seeing Spain against Venezuela. I want to watch that. Having like nation-based,
Yeah.
I think it's a pretty strong kind of competition for Axie, for every single game.
No, definitely, and we love the idea, and actually, it got a lot of support internally, and most of it was, let's save this for Origin because this is such a cool idea. We really want to activate it once we get this big push and all these new users coming in. So we love the idea. I think we just want to get the timing right, and it's something that is on our list. I think I've been discussing actually with your team about what that could look like at the end of this year or maybe the beginning of next year, and really do like a cool like World Cup style Axie tournament. I'm all about it, dude. I'm bullish as hell. Sign me up.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would love to have that. Yeah, maybe you guys in the comments, the one watching the video, what do you think about that? Having like a World Cup, a nation-based tournament around
Yeah.
Axie Infinity.
I'm into it. Yeah, I'd love to get some feedback. The more support we can get for that, the more I can champion it internally. So I'm going to do it here. I'm going to activate the audience to give me the ammunition to get this one over the finish line. But no, I think it's really cool, and like showing that global representation of Axie is really important. So keep an eye out, man. We've got some other announcements in the pipeline. I wish I could spoil, but I absolutely can't. But this Origin Championship in the Philippines is really just the beginning. Things are ramping up, and yeah, internally things have been accelerating at Sky Mavis, and I think people are just about to get to see under the hood and the fruits of that labor. So I'll leave it there with those teasers, but. Man, Kmanu, this was awesome. We need to find more time just to sit down and catch up. This was like this hour just flew by. That was the easiest
Yeah.
conversation of my life. That was amazing.
I mean, thanks so much for your time. It was kind of, sorry if I asked too much. I
No,
just
it was
used the
great.
opportunity to ask you, yeah.
I mean,
But
I
it
think
was
you're in
pretty cool
line
to
with what the
chat, yeah.
people really want to hear about, and that's the great thing. If you don't ask, then I'm going to ask you questions, and I think we got a good balance. We learned a little bit more about you, but that's what Axie Tuesday is all about. We do these every other Tuesday. There's no rule that you only get to do one. We can bring you back in the future and just continue the conversation. It's been great though. You're very in touch with the Latam community, and it's just great to connect, and always happy to answer any questions I can that people are curious about.
Thanks for inviting me. I would love to be a part of this of Active Tuesday again, maybe in the future. And thanks also for being so comprehensive on my questions and everything. As you mentioned, I'm trying to get like everything that my community wants to know, and at the same time, making my own point of view around Axie and everything what's going on. So, well, thanks so much for the space.
Yeah, absolutely. Really, really appreciate you, man. Folks, make sure you give him a follow. He's on YouTube. He's on Twitter. He's all over the place. And, well, if you're at the next Axie meetup or so, there's a chance you might just bump into him. Thank you so much for watching, folks. We'll have more Axie Tuesdays coming. You know where to find us by now. Everything Axie Infinity on all social medias. Thank you so much. No matter where you're watching, we'll catch you next time.